We are wrestling.
Come with me now back to the 1990s, unless you weren't born in the 1990s of course, in which case just pretend, you incredibly young person, as we are entering the wrestling vault as I present to you 5 WCW shows that will knock you sideways. Ted Turner's WCW has often been painted badly by Vince and WWE in the 20 years since they bought their rivals, but there is plenty of quality in the WCW back catalogue, ranging all the way from the late 80s to the late 90s. Perhaps you lived through the Monday Night War yourself and are just after a nostalgia fix, or maybe you were so disheartened by WrestleMania 37 Night 2 that you need to go back to when wrestling ruled the world. This list is in no particular order, just 5 shows I think you need to give your attention to. 1994 was a really nice time to be a WCW fan. The roster was stacked with legendary superstars who were just about to leave their prime years, and on the flip side we had so many up and coming wrestlers that were about to become superstars in the late 90s themselves. We're talking Steve Austin, DDP, Brian Pillman, Mark Miro, Vader, the Big Boss Man, Mick Foley, Ricky Steamboat and Ric Flair, Steve Regal, and so many other superstars here on this card. Ric Flair, who was booking at the time, must have had an incredible eye for the future. The main event here of Ric Flair versus Ricky Steamboat is, as you would expect, absolutely fantastic, but goodness knows, if you don't like that, then there is plenty else on offer for you here on this card. Sting wrestled Rick Rude in a great match for the short-lived International Heavyweight Championship in what would be Rick Rude's last ever pay-per-view match before sustaining a back injury that would end his in-ring career. Check out Steve Austin with his gorgeous mop of blonde hair taking on Japanese legend the Great Muta for the US title, and a pre-Mankind Mick Foley in his Cactus Jack get-up taking on Knobs and Sags, aka the Nasty Boys, in a quick but brutal weapons brawl. And let's not forget Flying Brian Pillman versus the latterly William Regal in a satisfying technical match. Whenever I get the chance to see a Pillman match, I try and soak it in, knowing that there's a limited supply of his wrestling matches to enjoy. This pre-NWO card absolutely blasts everything WWE attempted to fart out in 1994, something for everyone to enjoy on this card, and very rewatchable from top to bottom. Take a look at the poster for Beach Blast 92. They don't make them like this anymore. Absolutely brilliant. You'll notice a gritty difference between the presentation here and the later events in this list, as the revolving door of bookers in WCW had reached old school veteran Cowboy Bill Watts by 1992. Watts was brought in to cut costs for Turner, and he himself wanted an old-time wrestling show, and that can be seen in the removal of the ringside mats because he thought it would make the wrestlers look tougher, and he introduced strict match time limits and banned moves from the top rope because, you know, realism. Like everyone, his philosophy brought with it good and bad changes to the product, but if he knew anything, he knew how to book an entertaining show in the ring and bell to bell. The first 3 matches weren't great, with the opener seeing our boy Brian Pillman taking on Scotty Flamingo for the light heavyweight title. Brian was one of the victims of the Watts pay cut drive, and that combined with the banning of moves from the top rope did not make him a happy wrestler. This contest could have been so much more had Pillman been motivated, and every time I see Scotty Flamingo I just think, please turn into Raven soon, you're so much better than this. Let's look at the rest of the card though, which is actually very, very good. The WCW Tag Team title match was an absolute 30-minute scorcher, with the Steiner brothers taking on Miracle Violence Connection. If you've only ever seen the Steiners work as a tag team during their mediocre WWE run in the 90s, then that's a shame for you, as they were absolutely allowed to go balls to the wall in WCW and were treated as tag team gods in the early part of the decade. A 30-minute Iron Man match next. This one was a blood feud in as much as the dastardly Rude broke Steamboat's beautiful nose and set Family Man Steamboat up as though he'd been having affairs with multiple lovely ladies on the road. Easily one of the best Iron Man matches in history, and in my opinion it absolutely blows the Bret vs Shawn WrestleMania Iron Man match out of the water. And who can forget what was basically Mick Foley's coming out party, with Cactus Jack facing Sting here in a really brutal Falls Count Anywhere match. We've all seen Cactus Jack diving off the ring apron onto Sting and onto the cold concrete floor in clips before. Now treat yourself to the entire incredible match. Often the consensus among wrestling fans is that not much good came about in WCW after around 1998. However, that is simply not true. While the wheels were definitely showing signs of coming off the tracks in the early part of the year, Nitro managed to remain an entertaining and somewhat coherent watch right up until, well, shortly after this event actually. Live from Tacoma, Washington, the main event pitted 4 legitimate wrestling superstars in a 4 corners match for the big gold belt, featuring reigning champion and WCW President Ric Flair, Diamond Dallas Page, Sting and Hulk Hogan, and then we had a returning Randy Savage in the stripes as a special guest referee. This match was absolutely loaded by anybody's standards, and the rules stipulated it was sudden death, the first fall wins the title. Think of a heel now and I can think of one better. Whoever you're thinking of right now was no match for Scott Steiner in 1999. Yes, he was absolutely mental, but that's what made him so goddamn intimidating. His entrance for his match against Booker T would have been entertaining enough. He was never scared to get in the faces of the fans and badmouth them like a proper heel should do. This match was just okay, but you've got to enjoy any moment you can be in the presence of the genetic freak. Cruiserweight action next in WCW, and it was always held in high regard, but it absolutely reached its peak here with a couple of absolute scorchers. Juventud, Guerrera and Blitzkrieg set the mat on fire, not literally, in the opening contest for a shot at the Cruiserweight title down the line on Nitro, and a demasked Rey Mysterio took on Billy Kidman in what you might like to call a masterclass. Clearly, little Ray Ray's powers don't diminish when you can see his face. Next, we can check out one of the best tag team matches in WCW history, pitting Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko against Raven and Perry Saturn. 4 men who should have been pushed to the moon by WCW put on an absolute tag team clinic here. Otherwise on the card, Kevin Nash faced Goldberg 4 months after Nash had ended Goldberg's famed unbeaten streak. Bill was after revenge on Big Sexy in this contest. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot to mention, Scotty Riggs was on the card too, and we all like a bit of Scotty Riggs, don't we? Bash at the Beach 1996, and let's get this out of the way first. Historically, this is a must-watch pay-per-view for any wrestling fan, if not for only that famous moment that changed the course of the business forever, that night in Daytona, Florida. No, I'm not talking about Disco Inferno being allowed to work in a ring with Dean Malenko. It is of course Hulk Hogan's heel turn and alignment with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, forming the New World Order. It is hard to grasp today the enormity of Hogan's heel turn at the time, as any fan who remembers back then will tell you they never thought they'd see the day that Hogan would turn his back on the Hulkamaniacs, brother. Do check out some choice highlights from the rest of the card too, as joking aside, Disco Inferno did hold his own in a really entertaining Cruiserweight title match against Dean Malenko. And speaking of cruiserweights, Rey Mysterio and Psychosis had a scorching match to open the show, easily match of the night, and possibly the best match the men had against each other ever. Elsewhere on the card, it is always wonderful to see Ric Flair winning championships, and he did on this night too by picking up the US title in a match against Conan with an assist from Woman at ringside. And the beautiful Miss Elizabeth was there too. And finally, we come on to the Great American Bash 1989, for many years considered one of the greatest pay-per-views of all time. There's a $15,000 Triple Crown King of the Hill double ring battle royal to kick the show off, and even after watching this show 3 times, I'm still struggling to convey the rules of the contest, so I won't bother. Let's talk about the absolute belter between Surfer Sting and the Great Muta instead then. Somehow these lads managed to produce a fantastic match in less than 9 minutes. Lex Luger faced Ricky Steamboat for the US title, and this match was just 11 minutes long, but was probably Luger's best career performance actually, which is quite depressing when you consider his forthcoming WWE career and later WCW career. He had all that time to work, and this early work here was his greatest match, but it does this card a ton of justice. A bit of comedy relief during a pay-per-view always comes as a welcome distraction when it doesn't go on too long, obviously, and luckily this tuxedo match between Paulie, Dangerously and Jim Cornette was short and sweet. On to your main events then. How about one of the greatest gimmick matches of all time? Yes, it's War Games. This was the fourth televised version of the match. Fans watched in awe as the two rings set up were enveloped by the mega cage. This one pitted the Road Warriors, Midnight Express and Steve Williams against the fabulous Freebirds and the Samoan SWAT team. The Freebirds and the Road Warriors looked absolutely awesome in this match too. And then finally, your main event of the evening, your actual main event, saw Ric Flair take on Terry Funk for the NWA belt. One of Funk's greatest ever televised matches. This was a brutal affair in which Funk did not shy away and delivering moves onto the concrete floor. The most violent Ric Flair match you'll ever see, this one really proved that Ric Flair was the man. One of the things we can't overlook about this match as well is it's one of the very rare occasions you get to see Ric Flair as a babyface. But just check out his entrance and you can see that he's a little bit more friendly, shall we say, on the way to the ring here. One of the few appearances for Ric Flair in the 80s there as a babyface, and it's fantastic to see. So there you have it. 5 WCW events worth your time rediscovering. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and click that subscribe button. It's totally free.